I would like to announce that I am just appointing Maulana Afthab Cassim as a wakil. In my absence, he can make you breathe.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ونبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد صلاة دائمة مقبولة تعدي بها عنا حقه العظيم. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد، أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الأمين المكين الكريم. ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. غوث أعظم بمن بيسر وساما مدده قبلة دي مدده كعبة هما مدده قادری من عرائے یا غوث آدم میزنم دمز شیخ احمد رضا خان قطب عالم میزنم سیدی یا مرشدی شاہ مصطفیٰ خان زندہ باد. مسلک سرکار اعلی حضرت زندہ باد. یا الہی مسلک احمد رضا خان زندہ باد. حفظ ناموں سے رسالت کا جو ذمہ دار ہے سیدی یا مرشدی شاہ مصطفیٰ خان زندہ باد. حامل فیض رضا مصطفیٰ امداد کن صلی اللہ علیہ نبی الامی و آلہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم. صلاة و سلام علیک یا سیدی یا سندی یا حبیبی یا طبیبی یا رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم وعلی آلک و اصحابک یا رحمت للعالمین. All praise is due to Almighty Allah. Durood and salams upon the most perfect, exalted and glorified of Allah's creation, Sayyiduna wa Maulana Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Peace, blessings and salutations upon the Anbiya Ikram, Ahl Bayt Athhar, Sahaba Ikram, Khulafa Rashidin, Tabain, Tabain, Aimai Mushtahideen, Awliya Kamilin, and all those who will follow the path until the last day. We thank Almighty Allah through His infinite mercy and through the wasila of Rasul Akram sallallahu alayhi wasallam for blessing us with the opportunity to congregate during this Mubarak nights of Rabiul Akhir Sharif to remember him and his beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam and to pay tribute to the Imamul Awliya, Awsul Aqwas, Fardul Afrad, Sayyidina Shaykh Mahiuddin Al-Qaadiri Al-Jilani Al-Baghdadi radiyallahu an, who is indeed, without doubt, the Imam of all the awliya Allah, through whose barakat all the awliya Allah receive the maqam of wilayat. Today in Lodge Grove Masjid I discussed a few issues and few discussions about the awliya Allah, and for those of you that were there, I'm going to continue with that discussion here tonight and then over the next few nights, inshallah Al-Azam. But for those that were not there, for barakat, let me explain that the awliya Allah, the pious servants of Allah, before we talk about Ghaus Pak radiallahu anh, it is so important to understand the maqam and the fadilat of a wali. Subhanallah. The awliya Allah, the pious servants of Allah, these are the true, the loyal and the devoted servants of Allah. These are those beloved servants of Allah जिसका जीना और मरना रब के रजा के लिए है. Their living and their leaving this world is for the pleasure of Almighty Allah. It is for the pleasure, and when we say it is for the pleasure of Allah, then it is for the pleasure of Allah and His beloved Rasul sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. The awliya Allah, from the very beginning of time, these are those pious servants of Allah, especially the awliya of the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, that Allah has blessed them with this fazilat and this maqam and this authority, that Allah has given them the taqat and the power to do that which ordinary people like you and I cannot do. Okay? And the reason for this is that so that they may use this as a means to attract the hearts towards the deen of Almighty Allah. That is one of the reasons that they are given this taqat. That is why you will find that the awliya Allah have been blessed with the power of karamat. Many of them have got the power of karamat. Some make it zahir, some don't make it zahir. But like I said in Jum'ah today, that the greatest karamat is istiqamat. The greatest karamat is to be firm upon the shariat of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now while we're talking about this, let me tell you, very important at the beginning we must understand that one who is not an alim cannot be a wali. One who is not an alim cannot be a wali. Meaning, if he doesn't have the knowledge of Allah's deen, he cannot reach the maqam of wilayat. Now we're going to go into the court of Gawth Pak, radiyallahu ta'ala an, for me to explain further. Somebody is going to give me this waqia and say, now what do you have to say? So I'm going to give you the waqia before somebody else gives you. Okay, we are in the court of Sarkar Gawth Pak radiyallahu an, and a thief enters. This is the court of Sarkar Gawth Pak, very mashhur, very famous, bahut mashhur waqia. Okay, that a thief came into the bargah of Sarkar Gawth Pak. I'm giving you the essence because we're not going to keep this long every night. A person comes in the bargah of Gawth Pak radiyallahu an with the intention of what? Stealing from the house of Huzur Gawth Pak radiyallahu ta'ala an. And he gathers a whole lot of stuff from the house of Gawth Pak radiyallahu an in the night. And then he takes the whole bundle of what he wants and he wants to leave. And as he's about to leave, he finds that the door is not there. He cannot find a door to exit. Some narrations say he can't, his sight goes away. He cannot find, where's the door? Where do I go out? I got everything but I can't go out. So he comes back inside again, comes back into the section where he was picking up stuff from again. Little while again goes by, he takes his stuff, picks up everything and decides, let me go again. He can see the door from far away. As he picks the stuff and he comes near, ghaib. No darwaza, no exit for him. After a few times, he is trying to get out, he can't get out, he can't exit this Mubarak house of the king of the awliya Allah. So suddenly, he hears somebody knocking on the door. So he says, now if I try to exit from anywhere, I'm in trouble. So he runs into the cupboard. Or he runs into a closet, into a little place where he can hide. He goes and he hides there. And he hides there, and the door is knocked on, and Sarkar Gawth Pak radiyallahu anhu comes, opens the door. And the one responsible for appointing all the awliya Allah and putting them in their place comes to Sarkar Gawth Pak because the actual appointment is by him. And he comes and he says that the certain wali, the certain abdal of a certain place has passed away. Certain wali has left the dunya. We need somebody in his place. Somebody is needed in his place. Sarkar Gawth Pak says, okay, go and see in my closet. There is one there, take him and go. Go and see. In my closet, there is one there. Take him and go. That person goes, he opens the closet, that budur goes, he opens the closet, he finds this chore inside there. He grabs him and he says, come, let's go. You are now the abdal and the wali of the certain place. He says, no, I'm not any wali and kutub and abdal and all this. I'm a chore. I came from Gawth Pak's to Gawth Pak's darbar so that I can steal something, I can take something and go. I'm not any wali and budurg and all, bhai. I don't have any of this power. I've just come here so that I can get some stuff from here and go. He told him, listen carefully. Whatever you came here as, when Al-Qaadiri said you are the wali, you are the wali. When Al-Qaadiri radiyallahu anhu, Gawth Pak radiyallahu anhu said you are a wali, vilayat mil gayi. They say, so somebody tomorrow is going to go, just now you said person can't be a wali without being an alim. He needs to be an alim first. This is the power of wilayat. That when Allah bestows wilayat upon somebody, as He bestows, He gives him the ilm at that time, and then gives him that tahfa of wilayat. So that personality, by the nazar of Sarkar Gawth Pak radiyallahu anhu, the ilm was also filled in him, and he was given this status of wilayat immediately by the zuban of Sarkar Gawth Pak radiyallahu ta'ala. But look, if you look at this very carefully, what he came to do? He came to steal, he came to take something from the house of Gawth Pak. Gawth Pak ki ghar ke chor bhi khali nahi jata hai. Samajh rahe? Even the one who is the thief who came to steal something from the house of Gawth Pak. Gawth Pak says, you came here to take something. What do you want to take? Lampshades and take bed and take bistar, take vilayat and go. This is the court of Abdul-Qadir Jilani radiyallahu ta'ala. This is the darbar of Sarkar Gawth Pak. So the awliya Allah, the pious servants of Almighty Allah, have been blessed with this authority from the court of Almighty Allah. Now, regarding these pious servants of Allah, regarding the awliya Allah, there are numerous discussions, but one very simple and easy discussion to understand is that Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Kushairi radiyallahu anh, Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Kushairi radiyallahu ta'ala anh, in his world famous kitab Risala Kushairiyah, Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Kushairi radiyallahu anh speaks about a wali. He says, simply understand this. A wali is that person. Now you have to understand it. A wali is that person who is continuously striving to be obedient to his Rabb. A wali is that person who is continuously striving to be obedient to his Rabb, to Almighty Allah. He said, I should say that a wali is that person that Almighty Allah has taken it upon Himself to protect and guarantee his well-being. That is a wali of Allah. That is a wali of Allah, that Allah has taken upon His zimma karam, His protection and His everything. Why? Because He has given His everything for the pleasure of Almighty Allah. Whatever they do it for the pleasure of Almighty Allah. And Alhamdulillah, a personality who did this all his life is Sarkar Sayyidina Shaykh Muhyiddin Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani Al-Baghdadi radiyallahu ta'ala an. Now, we were talking about it today in Jummah, and I said, and I'm being very brief today, inshallah from tomorrow we'll go into a little bit more detail. Hazrat Sarkar, we said that Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Baqir radiyallahu an, the son of Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Zainul Abidin radiyallahu an, and the person who is known as Abu Ja'far. In other words, the father of Hazrat Imam Ja'far, Sadiq radiyallahu an. What did he say? He said, Allah has written 3 things in 3 things. He has concealed 3 things in 3 things. I told you in Jummah. But the last thing, what did he say? Allah has concealed the awliya Allah amongst the people. And I gave you an example in Jummah which explained the waqia of that slave. That slave and how Hazrat Sayyidina Ibrahim Khawas radiyallahu an found the condition of the slave. And what was said about him? He doesn't eat at the whole day. He doesn't sleep in the night, and he hardly talks. Now these 3 things, since we're talking about a wali, before we talk about the depths of the maqam of Sarkar Gawth Pak, let's little bit talk about the awliya. He says that the Sufyan Ikram have said that the sign of wilayat and one of the sign of a true Sufi is one who eats less, sleeps less, and talks less. Eats less means he eats enough that gives him taqat to do whatever he needs to do. Enough taqat to make ibadat and stand in the court of Allah. That is why the mashayikh and the great awliya have said, when you eat food, eat with this niyat, that I'm eating so that I get strength, and with this strength I'll be able to stand and make Allah's ibadat. Then eating that food is also ibadat. And this is why you eat. Don't eat because the burger is very nice, like how we do. Don't eat because the biryani is top, so I need to eat it. No. You eat with the niyat, because innamal a'malu bin niyat. Your eating too is becoming beneficial to you. You eat because I want to eat and build strength in my body, and with this taqat I want to stand up and I want to make the ibadat of Almighty Allah. I want to sit for hours and to recite the Quran. I want to spend time reading Durood Sharif on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I want energy in my body. So the eating less meaning eating sufficient, which is enough for you to do all these things. Sleep less, in other words, he never used to sleep in the night, that budurg. That fakir that was there, who was in the form of a slave. Not sleeping meaning what? Spending time in the ibadat of Almighty Allah. Because when you overeat also, then you can't be in the ibadat of Allah. A person who overeats, you become lazy. And when you become lazy, your nafs is gone fat already. What ibadat are we going to make at that time? So, another important point. And the third thing is, don't talk unnecessarily. Because it has been reported that a man who talks too often is usually a liar. A person who talks too much is usually a liar, because he makes up stories. Got nothing to say to kuch kahani banao, so that you can make people excited and make them laugh. And this, half the time this is done because there are lies in it. Okay, so eat less, sleep less, talk less. This is the signs of a mystic, of a Sufi. That is why this waqia of Hazrat Sayyidina Ibrahim Khawas radiyallahu anhu, which I reported to you, which I explained to you, it explains that the banda, the servant of Almighty Allah, when he reaches the level of wilayat, when he reaches that stage, then he does not bother about the dunya, yet he lives in the dunya. He does not bother about the dunya, yet he lives in the dunya. That is why you say that the sign of the awliya is that they live in the dunya, yet they divorce themselves from the dunya. They're living here, but yet they divorce themselves from the dunya. Why? Because they're not living in the dunya for the dunya. They're living in the dunya to prepare for their akhirat. Okay? Now, if you want to understand better this dunya, while we're on the discussion of awliya, if you want to understand better the dunya, let me tell you what Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Baqir radiyallahu anhu said. Again, Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Baqir radiyallahu anhu said, he said you should think of the world as a transit point. See what the awliya Allah think this world is? Transit point. And what the ordinary people like you and I think, hamesha ya rehna hai. We made this thing our full stop, final destination, thinking कि यहाँ से कुछ करना नहीं, जाना नहीं. Yet we all know that we're going to die. Right? So the awliya Allah have reached that level of excellence and that qurb they have achieved in the court of Almighty Allah, that Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Baqir radiallahu anh says, now look, a wali is telling us, a beloved servant of Allah is telling us, somebody from the Ahl Bayt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us that you should think of the world as a transit point where you disembark and just transit through. You disembarked, you came from the womb of your mother. We came into this dunya, we disembarked. And now we are just transiting through this world. We're not going to stay here. He said the world is a transit point. Think that you have entered here, you have disembarked, now you are passing through. What is next level? This is how they think, né? That is why they reach this maqam. This is how they think. He said, think of this as a transit point where you disembark and transit through, and then he says, or you should regard it as the kind of wealth. The moment we talk about wealth, everybody's eyes is going to start spark, because we need money in our life, we need wealth in our life. Na? So Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Baqir says, radiallahu anh, that think of this dunya as that transit point where you disembarked and you're just going to pass through. He said, oh, think of it, of that wealth, that dawlat, which you dreamt about. Think of it as that dawlat, of that wealth, which you dreamt about. And when you woke up, there's nothing. Yani, aise dawlat samjho usko, jo sirf khwab mein dekha. Think of this dunya as that wealth that you only dreamt about. When your eyes open, you realize you have nothing. What he's telling you? Think of this dunya as that wealth that you dreamt about. Think it is a dream, because when you're going to wake up again, it's going to be inside your qabr and not in this dunya. It's going to be in your qabr and not in this dunya. That is why the awliya Allah do not attach themselves to the dunya. They do not attach themselves to the materialistic aspects of the dunya. Even though Allah gave them everything, but they are not attached to it. They are not attached to it. Sarkar Gawth Pak radhiyallahu anhu had anything short? Gawth Pak's dawlat. Gawth Pak used to wear one jubba that was thousands of gold coins worth. One jubba every day. But you know what Gawth Pak used to do at the end of the day? He used to take the jubba and make it khairat. He used to wear it in the day, and by the evening he used to make it khairat. People used to say, such an expensive jubba, you just took it and you made it khairat. Gave it to some poor person. He said, because that will become the means of the livelihood of that poor person thereafter. It will become the means of him. It will become a blessing for him. But subhanallah, those who are aqalmand knew that this thing is very valuable. We can give it away and earn wealth. But the other ones understood better that this is so valuable that you don't give it but you keep it, because it is the nisbat of Sarkar Gawth Pak radiyallahu ta'ala. Either way you are blessed. Okay? Either way you are blessed. Now, when it comes to these pious servants and the awliya Allah, you know, sometimes if you want to understand them, you have to understand the spiritual riddles. You have to understand the spiritual riddles in which they talk. Okay? And I'm going to give you one example. Okay? Very briefly tonight. We're not going to have a long discussion tonight. So, Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Yafa'i radiallahu anhu. Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Yafa'i radiallahu anhu narrates one waqia. He said that one slave of Allah, one servant of Allah from the Ahlullah, in other words, from amongst the pious servants of Allah, one pious servant in the days when they used to sell slaves, very similar to the example I mentioned in Jummah, but listen carefully. He says that one of the pious servants of Allah, in that zamana when people used to buy and sell slaves, in that zamana one of the pious servants of Allah bought a slave. He bought a slave. And he said, after I bought him, I asked him some questions. I asked that slave some questions. He said, I asked him, subhanallah, listen to the questions and then listen to the answers. And you will find the shan of the one who bought and the one who was bought. Okay? Why did he buy him? What was the reason even behind? To free him for the slave, for a pleasure of Allah. But you will see what happens. So, Hazrat Imam Yafa'i radiallahu anh says, this man, this budruk, was passing by a marketplace. There was a slave there who was being sold. He bought him. So, he says, the person who bought him says, I asked the slave some questions after I bought him. He said, and these are the answers that he gave. He's narrating, khud bata rahe, कि मैंने गुलाम खरीदा, उनको मैंने कुछ सवाल किया, और उनके जवाब सुन लिए. So he says, I asked him, the first question I asked the slave, what is your name? I asked the slave, What is your name? The slave answers to me, my name is as you name me. You have to listen carefully to understand it. It's a spiritual riddle in the question and answer. आपका नाम क्या है? मेरा नाम वही जो आप रखे. What is your name? He says, you are now my master, eh? I am your slave. So he asks, what is your name? He says, my name is as you name me. Then he says, I asked him, what work do you do? What work do you do? What do you expect to be part of your duties? तुम्हारे काम क्या होगे? कौन सी जिम्मेदारियां होगी? He said, the slave answered, my duty and work is to act upon what you command. My duty and my work is to act upon whatever you command. आप जो हुक्म दे वो मुझे करना पड़ेगा. आप मेरे you are my master. He said, then I asked him, कि तुम खाओगे क्या? What will you eat? He said, you are my master. I will eat whatever you provide for me. What is your name? Whatever you call me, I am that. What will you do? Whatever you command me, I will do that. What will you eat? Whatever you provide for me, I will eat. He said, then I asked him, part of that third question, I added something. I said, is there something specific which your heart desires? क्या तुम्हारे दिल की कोई खास एक ऐसे कोई ख्वाहिश है? Do you have any desire? Do you have any wish? He said, the slave answered, how can the slave desire something whilst in the presence of his master? Allahu Akbar. This is a worldly discussion happening, but there are secrets of ruhaniyat inside this discussion. He said, how can a slave wish and desire anything when he is in the court of his master, when he's in front of his master? He says, whatever you will as my master is what I desire. And whatever is your pleasure is my pleasure. The Budurk says, when I heard his answers to my questions, I began to cry. बोले उसके सवाल सुन के मैं रोने लगा. I listened to his answers, उनके जवाब सुन के. I listened to his answers और मैं रोने लगा. क्योंकि मुझे अपने रब से निस्बत याद आ गई. I remembered my connection to my Rabb by the questions that I asked that slave. And the answers that he gave. He said, I said to the slave, वो अपने गुलाम से कहने लगा. He said, I said to the slave, O noble and pious man, you have taught me the true meaning of obedience in the court of my Rabb. Today you have taught me how to obey Allah. That when you say, who are you? I am Abdullah. I am Allah's banda. I am what Allah wills me to be. If somebody asks me, what will you eat? I eat whatever my Rabb gives me. I make shukr upon that day. If I say, what is your duty? My duty is that which pleases my Rabb, Allah Almighty. He said, from his answers to me, as a human I understood my responsibility in the court of my Rabb. If this is a slave's answer to his worldly master, then what is my answer in the court of the Creator who creates everything and created everything? This is the shan of a wali. This is the ruhaniyat which is hidden in the zaban of a wali, of the pious servants of Allah. And if you look at the life of Sarkar-e Gawth Pak radiallahu anhu, there are times when Gawth Pak went days and nights without eating. I'll explain more details as the days go. Days and nights without sleeping. Lengthy periods, Gawth Pak radiallahu anhu, when he used to be in the dhikr of Allah. When he used to be in the dhikr of Allah Almighty. The tajalliyat of Allah which descended upon Sarkar-e Gawth Pak were so intense that while standing and when the tajalliyat used to descend upon him, he would start running. He would start running in the dhikr of Allah, and when he stopped, he found he was days' journey away from Baghdad Sharif. Many days' journey away. How did he get there? He didn't even realize in the physical state that he was there. Why? Because he was drowned in the dhikr of Almighty Allah. So the pious servants of Allah, the awliya Allah, this maqam that they reach, it is something that the ordinary minds cannot understand. But if you attempt to understand a little bit, it will attach you closer to them, and your attachment to them will bring you closer in the court of Almighty Allah. And that is the maqsad of having these brief mahfils during these 11 nights of Gyarvi Sharif. Not so that we have any fanfare and we show so many people came or so many didn't come or what we did. No, this is for the pleasure of Allah. This is for the pleasure of Allah's Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to take us closer in the court of the awliya Allah. You know, these pious servants of Allah Almighty, if you try to understand, and I'm going to give you 2 examples tonight. 2 more examples and I'm going to end tonight. And then we can read Salatul Isha inshallah and we can continue. Once a fakir, a humble person in a state of ruhaniyat. Fakir doesn't mean necessarily a man who is a beggar sleeping in the street. Okay? This fakir, this ruhani personality, once he was invited on numerous occasions by a wealthy man. Many, many times, from the door of a wealthy man, one elan came, from the house of the wealthy person, there was an invitation, come, there's a dawat for you. Come, there's an invitation for you. Numerous, many times. This fakir was invited numerous occasions by a wealthy man. But every time he went to the door, when he reached the door, they shut the door and he says, Allahu Akbar. I want you to put yourself in this position. I put myself in this position. Somebody invites me for a dawat, and as I get to the door, they tell me, you can go now. And not one time, many times. What will be your heart state? How much of taklif you will have? How sad you will be? How disappointed you will be? And if the person did it to you once, leave alone second, 3 and 4 and 5 times, you won't even go the second time. The first time you went to somebody else, invited you for a meal or for something, and you get to his door and he says to you, go from here. Go away, don't come. Will you go back again? But this budurg, this pious man was invited numerous times from the door of this one man, from the house of this one man. And he went numerous times, and numerous times he was turned away. But the fakir did not show any disappointment. He did not show any anger. He did not show any discontentment. He actually walked away feeling very happy. He walked away feeling very content. When this happened a few times, one day the wealthy man, he called the fakir. Called him and he said, how is it that my disrespectful behavior has no effect on you? This is something very great in you. यानी तुम्हारे अंदर ये बहुत शानदार एक क्वालिटी है. You have a very great quality that इतने बार मैं आपको ठुकरा रहा हूं तब भी तुम वापस आ रहे हो. यानी I am calling you, I am trying to make a fool of you. I am trying to mock you. I am calling you and then I am chasing you away. But you are still not unhappy. You are not upset. You are just walking away comfortably. You know, this is a very great quality that you have. The fakir looked at him and smiled. He said, since when did this become something very great? Since when did this become something very great? He said, it is something very small. This quality that I have, that your behavior and your bad behavior doesn't hurt me and doesn't cause me any taklif. He said, this is something very small, which is even found in a dog. Allahu Akbar. He says, this is something which is very minor, which is even found in a dog. He said, when you call it, it comes to you. And when you shun it, it walks away. When you call it, it comes to you. And when you shun the dog, it walks away. He says, so what's so great about this quality that I have? But in reality, it is a great quality. That budruk, that fakir was teaching a lesson to that man. That time and over you chase and you call. I'm not coming because of your wealth. I'm not coming because of your dawat. I'm coming here to teach you a lesson. I'm coming here to teach you a lesson. The lesson being that the servants of Allah do not care about this dunya. Jab khilao, na khilao. Khilane wala to Rabb hai. Almighty Allah is the one who provides. And, you know, regarding this, Hazrat Sayyidina, I'm going to end with this. Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Hassan Basri. I want you to all listen carefully. And then when we talk about Gawth Pak radiallahu in detail from tomorrow, you'll understand it better. Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Hassan Basri, who doesn't know? I'm not going to go into detail. The great and the one of the most powerful Sufiyan Ikram, Sufis of his zamana, Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Hassan Basri radiallahu anh, he says, कि कुत्ते में 10 ऐसी फितरतें हैं. There are such 10 qualities in a dog which should be found in every believer. ऐसे खसलतें हैं 10 कुत्तों के अंदर जो हर मोमिन के अंदर होना चाहिए. There are such 10 khaslats in a dog that you should have in yourself. Sometimes you learn from the creatures. Hazrat Imam Hassan Basri radiallahu anh said, number one, a dog remains hungry for lengthy periods of time. He said, have you not seen that this is the trait of the Salihin? क्या ये नहीं देखा आपने सालिहीन का ये तरीका है कि भूखे रहते? He said, see that dog. It's a trait that he has. But in the greater level, that is in the Salihin, they remain hungry for so long. He said the dog does not have a fixed residence. A dog doesn't have most, unless he's a dog that is owned by somebody generally, he's stray. He doesn't have this is my house. He said this is the shan of the Ahl Tawakkul. Those who have trust in Almighty Allah. They don't have a fixed place because they know this dunya is even not fixed. That one day they're going to leave and they're going to go away. He said the third thing, he said the dog barely sleeps at night because he's taking care of everything. He said this is the shan of the Ahl Muhabbat. That they spend their nights in the remembrance of their Creator and protecting those around them from the shaitan and from the enemies of Islam. And then he says when a dog dies, the fourth thing, he leaves behind nothing of inheritance. When a dog dies, he leaves behind nothing of inheritance. He said this is the trait of the Zahids. Those who make qana'at and are sufficient, are pleased with whatever Allah Ta'ala gives them. They got nothing when they die, they're left with nothing in the dunya. Because they have nothing to answer for from the materialistic things in the dunya. He said the fifth thing is the dog is always loyal and never leaves the court of his rightful master. The dog is always loyal and never leaves the court of his rightful master. He said this is the trait of the murid sadiq. He says this is the trait of a true murid in the court of a true sheikh. That no matter what happens, he will hold the darbar of his sheikh. He will not go anywhere else. He said the sixth trait in the dog you will see. A dog is comfortable with the smallest place that it is given. You give it the smallest place, it will be comfortable. He said this is the trait of the Ahl Tawazi. Those level of the pious servants of Allah, that even if they get a small place to put their head down in it, they make shukr in the court of Allah. They don't need a palace. Okay? And he said, if someone takes a dog's place or position, he just moves away to some other place. You take a place that belongs to, he'll just move away to some other place. He said, he moves away to some other spot. He said, this is the trait of the Ahl Raza. Those who are pleased with the pleasure of Allah. That if somebody moved you from here, then this is not your place anymore, that is your place. They will move. He said, the next thing, he said, a dog returns even upon a morsel of one who beat him and chased him away. Even if you beat the dog, you chase it away. But if you show it one morsel of food, again it will come back towards you. He said, and he forgets what happens. He said, this is the shan and the trait of the khashi'een. Those who fear of Allah, that no matter what hardships they go through in their life, what difficulty they go through in their life, they always come back to the court of their Creator Almighty Allah, because they know everything's from Allah. He said, when a dog is kept somewhere, the dog will sit far away and observe. If food is kept somewhere, you'll see the dog won't go straight for the room. It'll sit far away and it will observe. He said this is the trait of the masakin. Of the truly destitute and neither ones. They won't go looking for it. They'll wait till they are invited towards it. And he said that when he finally leaves any place, when he decides, when the dog makes up his mind that it's going to leave, then it will never come back. And said this is the state of those who are the Ghamzada. Those who are drowned in the grief of the love of their Creator. That they want to be close to Almighty Allah. When they leave any place, then they will never come back again. And those who they have left will benefit in no way. What he's trying to tell you? He's trying to tell you something that these 10 traits, if you look at it carefully, and you look at our lives, look at how we live, you will find that we should have these qualities in us, but we don't have it. Why? Because we have become the dogs of the dunya. People have become the dogs of the dunya. And the awliya Allah and the pious servants of Allah, they make themselves the dogs of the court of the awliya as well. The court of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Allah gives them this maqam. That is why Ala Hadrat Azimul Barakat, Imam Ahl Sunnat, Ala Hadrat radiallahu anh says, Ya Gawth Azam radiallahu ta'ala an, your court is that your dog even, that dog that sits at the stray dog that sits at the stoop of your court. Ya Sarkar Gawth Azam, his shan is that ki kya dabe jis pe himayat ka ho panja tera, sher ko khatra mein lata nahi kutta tera. That even a lion is slapped by the dog that sits on your court. What does this mean? It means that if you want to be successful in the dunya and the akhirat, you have to attach yourself to the pious servants of Allah. You have to attach yourself to the awliya, because these beloveds of Allah are those Mahbuban Khuda whose days and nights is for the pleasure of Allah. It's for the pleasure of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. And if you attach yourself to the beloveds of Allah, then you will stay away from the enemies of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Wahabi, Deobandi, Rafzi, Shia, Qadiani. And as our Murshid Huzur Tajushariah said, the worst of all of them, the Sulh Kulli. Stay away from them if you are attached to the pious servants of Allah. And if you have no attachment to the awliya Allah, you will see slowly the person's condition will become worse, and he will fall into the dungeons of being astray, and nobody will be able to take him out again. So it is very important upon us that if you want to understand the life of Gawth Pak radiallahu anhu, try to understand wilayat. Try to understand a little bit about this great and blessed station and this kingdom that Allah has given to the awliya Allah. It is a very khas and a very special place. Can you imagine? Think about it for 1 minute. Kitne khush nasib hai. How blessed are those servants of Allah whom Allah is saying that these are my beloveds. These are my awliya. These are more beloved in my court than anybody else amongst the ordinary people. What does that mean? It means that when Allah has chosen them, obviously if you're going to do anything against them, you're going to cause a war in the court of Allah, which is as per the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which I will explain in the days to come, inshallah al-azim. Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq khair. Allah keep us with iman. Let us leave this world with iman. Short discussion today, just for you to understand an introduction to the maqam of the awliya Allah, the humility of the awliya Allah, the condition of the awliya Allah. That not that they must wear one shandar jubba and kurta and show you that they can fly. This is not wilayat. This is not wilayat. We said from the beginning, it's istiqamat. It's firmness on the sharia. It's humility, obedience to Almighty Allah. And when they do that, then Allah takes upon His zimma karam to protect their honor, to protect the izzat, and to put their name in the hearts of the people. So may Allah keep us amongst the pious, keep us in the shade of the pious. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with the barakat of Sarkar Gawth Pak radiallahu anh. Inshallah al-azim, tomorrow I will try. From tomorrow what I'm going to be doing actually, I'll explain a little bit more about wilayat here and there. But I want to, for the next days till the 11th, I'm going to take one share of Ala Hadrat, Adimul Barakat, or any of the other mashayikh regarding Gawth Pak, and I'm going to give you a commentary of that share. Inshallah lazim, from tomorrow night we'll be doing that for a short time. Allah Ta'ala hame tawfiq khairat ata farmaye. Allah have mercy on the Muslims, on the Ahl Sunnah of Palestine, and wherever the Ahl Sunnah is going through parishani. Allah keep us with iman. Let us leave this world with iman. Wa ma alayna al-balagh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.